Okay, this is a pretty extensive chapter, so I might do this in two videos because it's pretty extensive and it's important to learn. So right here we're going to learn about abnormal psychology or psychological disorders. We're going to find what is abnormal, different perspectives about abnormality, and classify abnormal behavior. So, defining abnormal. I mean, in a lot of ways, anybody could be abnormal, different from average, deviate from what's normal with everyone else. You could be just a strange kid in the room. Alright, does that mean you have a psychological disorder that needs treatment? Not necessarily. Any abnormality that is in the DSM-5, okay, Diagnostic Statistical Manual 5th edition. If it's not in that book, it's made up. It's not real. All right? According to psychology, it's not real. All right? And we'll get into that in the next chapter, the DSM-5 and all those other things. Okay, so according to psychology, abnormal behavior is behavior that causes people to experience distress and prevents them from functioning in their daily lives. So it causes issues. It causes problems for them. To be happy and to function in society and to take care of themselves. And that's what we're going to consider to be abnormal behavior. So right here we have the different types of perspectives and how they might describe abnormal psychology, abnormal behavior. I'll leave it to you guys to go through each one of those. Each one of these are very important in determining if someone is suffering from a psychological disorder and how to treat it. Alright, so I'll leave that one to you. Again, I was telling you about the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, the 5th edition. It is a book, and within that book, psychiatrists or psychologists, clinical psychologists, use this book to diagnose anyone with a medical or psychological disorder related to the brain. And if it's not in there, it doesn't exist. Alright, some people like to say there's all these disorders that do not exist. Unless it's in the DSM-5, it's not in there. And so we shouldn't, and it's also important to understand we should not play therapists or psychologists by believing that we can diagnose someone with a mental disorder. She's bipolar. Well, you don't know that for sure. You have to be trained in order to diagnose anyone with anything. Okay? Not everybody could just do that. And so we're going to learn about anxiety disorders, somatoform disorders, dissociative disorders, mood, schizophrenia, personality, childhood, and a list of other disorders. Well, the number one disorder in the United States is anxiety disorders. People suffer from anxiety a lot. There's generalized anxiety disorder, which is very common. Basically, your life is just a big, you worry about everything. You constantly worry about everything. Women are more likely to have or report having anxiety in comparison to men. We're not for sure if that's because they're more likely to have it or they're more likely to report it. Anyways, an anxiety disorder is always worrying about something else or being attacked or always in fear. Okay? And phobias and panic disorders are related to those anxiety disorders. If you ever, a panic disorder or panic attacks, this happens to people who feel like they can't breathe. All of a sudden, they can't breathe, and they feel like they're going to die, and all these other things, and they feel like they're going to, and nothing ever happens to them, but the experience itself is enough to cause, a sympathetic response from the nervous system to cause the heart to increase, shortness of breath, sweating, fainting, all those other things. And it basically comes down to anxiety, being worried about things. I've already told you about general anxiety disorder And obsessive compulsive disorder we'll talk about later. Again, obsessive compulsion. Obsession is these thoughts that never go away. You obsess. Okay? Compulsion is the behavior that's related to those obsessive thoughts. So if you believe, right, that you have to check your oven 10 times before you leave the house, you will obsess over checking that oven until you checked it 10 times. The process of checking it 10 times is the compulsion part of the OCD, okay, obsessive compulsive disorder. What causes anxiety disorders? It could be a little bit of genetics. It could be your mom and dad's behavior. You've seen it, and now you're doing it. It could be cognitive. This loop of anxiety, wanting to reduce anxiety. So you do the behavior, then anxiety comes back again. You want to reduce the behavior, or reduce the anxiety, so you do the behavior. It's a circle that never ends. Somatoform disorders are psychological disorders, right? It's a psychological. You have physical symptoms that have no cause. Okay? You feel like you have a pain. You feel like you have your heart speed skipping a beat. You feel all these things, but nothing's really happening. So the somatoform is the inability to distinguish that this is not really occurring and it's not really happening, but to you, psychologically speaking, and physically speaking, it feels real and you think it's real. Dissociative personality disorders. Dissociative means to separate, to go somewhere else, okay, to see yourself doing something. It's like, sometimes when public speaking, you feel like you're not really public speaking, and then you dissociate yourself from that. It's like you're observing yourself. One famous dissociative identity disorder, which is commonly called multiple personality disorders. People have multiple personalities to help with different situations. And then maybe you have some repression with dissociative amnesia or fugue. Cause, well, it's a way to reduce anxiety. Basically what disassociation is to reduce fear and anxiety. And it's also a defense mechanism. Like dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality disorders, it seems to have a cause from traumatic events in childhood. So this traumatic event has somehow produced this dissociative disorders, and now when they're dealing with certain situations, they use different personalities. Okay, mood disorders have to do with your mood, happiness, sadness, those kind of things. Okay, so one of the biggest mood disorders is depression. Everybody gets depressed. That's just part of being a person. We get depressed. Now, how long that depression lasts will determine whether or not it becomes a disorder. And anything past 6 months is not considered to be normal. And so then you may have to go out and get some psychological therapy, talk therapy, or medicine, or what have you. Okay. So another one is major depressive disorder. And again, women are twice as likely to experience it than men. It might be because they're more likely to report it. But basically, when someone is majorly depressed, they feel down, they don't find any enjoyment in doing anything. They kind of rather stay home all day. They feel lethargic. They can barely move around. They feel guilty for something they did 20 years ago. And so it's hard for them to overcome it. And basically, it's always been someone in a down mood. It's really hard to enjoy life. Then you have other mood disorders like bipolar 1 disorder, which is extremes. You've got bipolar, opposite extremes. Okay. On one end of the spectrum, you have major depression. Right? Someone who's majorly depressed. All right. And then maybe the next time you see this person, a month or two later, they're at the manic state, all right, and they are super excitable, super happy. They can accomplish anything in the world. They're very dangerous with their behaviors. They're more, likely to do something impulsive, like gamble away all their money, stay up. They can't fall asleep for days. They talk 100 miles an hour. If they drink water, it's like you could get drunk off of it. They may be sexually more active than in comparison to what they're normally would be. And so there's these extreme polar opposites, but not much in the middle where homeostasis is. Okay, where you want to be. It's either one or the both. And this bipolar 1, lithium, which you find on the periodic table, a salt, is very good, or sodium, is very good for treating bipolar 1 disorder. The causes of mood disorders is really hard. It's a neurotransmitter problem, but then what comes is the chicken and the egg problem. Which comes first? Does the negative thoughts cause the serotonin and norepinephrine to be out of whack, or do they cause the negative thoughts and negative moods? Okay. Maybe you don't feel like you have a whole lot of control in your life. That can have a problem with mood disorders. You may develop what's called a learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is when you basically have given up trying. Kind of like like an elephant at a circus. A lot of times the handler doesn't even tie up the elephant. They just put the elephant where the elephant normally stands, and the elephant doesn't move because it learned a long time ago to give up when it could go ahead and move, because there's nothing tying him down. He's learned to be helpless. So there could be many different things. You may have learned to be depressed from your parents. It could be a genetic thing. It could be life happenings, losing a friend, starting a new job, getting a divorce, and there's financial problems. All these things can cause anxiety problems as well as depression.